or Gita.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal Opportunity Lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
For your safety and convenience, please listen to this message. Heavy haul transports for the new Ukadu power plant are occurring almost daily and will continue for the next few months. We encourage you to use alternate routes to avoid traffic delays. Alternate routes, project information, and live tracking are available at poweronthemove.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to receive Guam PDN text alerts. Doosan Ukadu Power and Doosan Enerability thank you for your patience and support.
After a week of showcasing the best soloists, choirs, small ensembles, bands, and orchestras from Guam, Saipan, Japan, and the U.S., the 2023 Tumonday Music Festival is coming to a close. Don't miss the grand finale event on Saturday, March 11th at the Micronesia Mall Center Court starting at 2 o'clock. See command performances from soloists and groups who wowed the judges, showcase performances, and the awards ceremony. TBMF is a production of the Guam Philharmonic Foundation. Visit tbmfguam.org for more information.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
So well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Here we go, sports fans, another Tailgater Friday where all of the tailgaters are out there flying the flag, wearing those attractive black T-shirts that Jose is just champing at the bit, waiting to tell you how you too can get a Tailgater T-shirt and appear on the Tailgater Rogues Gallery. So it is Friday, and we're here, and I'm here, and I was not here yesterday, and I'm not going to go into graphic details, but my stomach was not behaving itself the way it should, and that was really a recipe for being uncomfortable. But what was really uncomfortable was no tall tales yesterday.
Yeah.
That was tough. But I kept my fingers crossed and took other kinds of precautions. Prayed that I'd be able to come in and do the show today. I would feel so bad if I left you at the end of a week with staring at a Saturday and Sunday with no tall tales on a Friday in which there were no tall tales. So here I am. I'm so glad to be here. There's no place I would rather be on a Friday afternoon than right here in front of this microphone and this camera, talking to all you tailgaters out there in our international radio listening audience. So let's take a look and see what nonsense the Daily News is peddling for an editorial today.
After all that good news.
Yeah. There's a dark cloud for every silver lining, Jose. Our view. Mes Chamorro celebrations are underway. Biba, Guam. The beginning of Mes Chamorro was filled with exciting events to kick off the month. DFS on March 1, showcasing local art and design pieces by Rudy Rivera and Ronkin Joe Kitito Sianco for the public to view. Samples of famous Chamorro foods such as Kelaguen and empanadas were served. I wonder why they didn't mention, you know what I'm going to say here.
I sure do.
Yeah, why they didn't mention orange rice. To top it off, members from Inetnan Gefpago held a cultural dance performance for the opening ceremony. This weekend was also met with festivities in Humatak for a 4-day event leading up to Guam History and Chamorro Heritage Day on March 6th. The festival celebrated Chamorro culture and history, held a gathering of local visitors, residents and visitors to enjoy live entertainment, games, and food. On Monday, a reenactment of Magellan's Landing was held at the Magellan Monument Park at Humatic Bay. Mes Chamorro started off strong and will continue this weekend with more activities and events to enjoy. Activities at DFS will continue with live entertainment and live demonstrations. The exhibit remains open. An art exhibit at the Agana Shopping Center from Kaha is also open to view. There also will be cultural performances this weekend and throughout the month at GPO and Agana Shopping Center, as well as pop-up shops and various activities. The Valley of the Latte will hold a different workshop every Saturday until the end of the month. Performances and workshops will be held at various hotels on the weekends. The University of Guam will be hosting a Chamorro language competition at Calvo Fieldhouse. Along with events and activities for the community to enjoy, let's also support local talent featured in our Mes Chamorro musicians column in the lifestyle section. We also have the full comprehensive list of more events happening on the island throughout March, updated weekly, which we could have run instead of this silly editorial. But we had to fill this news hole with something. So, dispensa fan. Yeah, so there you go. It's just a list that would have made not even a very good news story. All right, let's check out the card and see if there's any ore to mine in the card today. Of course, we start out with systemic racism. No Public Law 3634 items today. We've got the NBA versus biology, Frenchie versus the Neocats, the GVB board versus the open government law, Taibbi versus the media cartel and big tech, McNinch versus the Separate, a new name for the separatists brought about by a typo in my what's this thing called, Jose? Stack.
The phone list, yeah.
In my stack. My stack shows me who's online and what they want to talk about. And Jose was typing separatist, and he stopped typing when he got to the I. I took a look at it, and I like it. So from now on, Jose, what we've been referring to is the separatists. That's that Protecti, Latexan crowd, Hope Cristobal, all that gang. They are the separate. We've invented a new word, right? Or you invented a new word right here on Tall Tales.
And I'm going to claim it was intentional.
Congratulations. And then we've got Antifa versus Rowling, Jungle Watch versus Lou, Ginger and the Car versus Lou, Red and Blue, Red versus Blue, Blue versus Gray, Friend, Drescher versus Empty Green. I probably won't even get that far, so I'll stop there. We got a lot of items on the card that have been there for a while. I'm not going to spend much time on this one. You know that the rice is orange, and you know that the narrative says no, it's red, and you know that Paul Zerzan wrote a letter to the editor saying, let's not look stupid. Let's stop calling orange rice red rice. And you know that the Daily News came right back with the narrative, leave our rice alone.
How dare you?
And they canceled Paul Zerzan, who's a really good letter writer. Paul is a brilliant guy, and you talk about think outside the box. Paul thinks of things, very interesting things, that your common sense is not going to get you to.
And mostly 120 words or less.
Yeah, and he is very economical in his expression. He doesn't use sesquippedal words when 2 or 3 syllables will do, Jose. I don't know if he'd ever make it as a talk show host.
I don't think so.
With habits like that.
He'd have to sell a lot of ads.
Yeah. So, as far as the narrative versus the facts. So the narrative is that the rice is red, and anybody who can't say the rice is red is a bad person and deserves to be canceled. The fact is that what we've been calling red rice is orange. So I've got this graphic that lays it out very nicely. Yeah, now you see word number 1. It's hard to hold this thing correctly and look at it too, yeah. Now you see that the word is orange, but the color of the letters is red. So that's where you are. Or looking at it this way, the letters are orange, but the word is red. So in number 2, the narrative is the word and the facts are the colors of the letter. In number 1, the narrative is the color of the letters, the facts are the word. So I make this reference all of the time because we're constantly dealing with a collision between the narrative and the facts. And we'll get into that on the card today with the NBA versus biology, the narrative versus the facts. So let's jump right into that, NBA versus biology. This ran in LifeSite News on March 7th. NBA Toronto Raptors apologized for Women's History Month video saying only females give birth.
You didn't get them canceled?
The Toronto Raptors basketball team. And when I read this, first thing I said, what in the hell is the world coming to? We're letting Canadians have a professional basketball team? I don't think they know how to play basketball in Canada, do they, Jose?
I hear it's on ice.
Yeah, hockey, yeah. Canadians are pretty good at hockey, but basketball? And I always ask, when I run into folks from Canada, I always want to test their patriotism. And the question I usually ask them is, do you guys have 4th of July in Canada? And they'll almost always tell me, no, we don't have a 4th of July in Canada. And I come back, so you go from the 3rd to the 5th. Oh, no, we have Dominion Day. I thought you were talking about Independence Day. Yeah. So now there's even a professional. It was bad enough, when they let Major League Baseball team have a Major League Baseball team have a team in Toronto, but Montreal, sacre bleu.
All the way up there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they don't even speak English in Montreal, for crying out loud.
They don't let you speak English up
Yeah,
there.
they don't
I've
even
been there before.
Yeah, they don't even want you to speak English. Yeah, so here's the story. The Toronto Raptors basketball team has apologized for a video in which players acknowledge that only women can give birth, amid a flurry of condemnation from left-wing activists. The Daily Caller reports that on March 1, the team posted to social media a Women's History Month video asking why girls rule the world. So, they're trying to pander. Why do girls rule the world? Well, because there's so much, on and on. You can think of all different ways of answering that. So point guard Malachi Flynn answering that women are the only ones that can procreate. Whoa. And center Precious Achiuwa, now this is not the WNBA, this is the NBA, Precious Achiuwa, that they birthed everybody. Oh, man. Despite being biologically accurate, for what little that makes a difference nowadays. The comments in the video were slammed for offending the sensibilities of those who believe that gender identity is fluid. SB Nation editor Gianna Kelly, for instance, declared that, quote, one way to show you actually want to celebrate and empower women would be by helping provide menstrual products to women who need them, promoting a group that fights for period equity. I think they're the ones who, at what was it, a school somewhere in the Northeast, where they decided that the Student Body Association was going to have to pay to put menstrual products in the men's room. Yeah. We're an organization that prides ourselves on doing the right thing when it comes to inclusion and representation, and we made a mistake, the Raptors responded. Our sincerest apologies to our players, our staff, and our fans. We'll work to do better today and every day after. How dare they? Many saw the team's apology as cowardice, including former National Basketball Association player Andrew Bogut. Yeah, I see it as cowardice. Yeah, they're trying to Paul Zerzan, these guys. Not sure if the team apologized because they think men can get pregnant or because they think players focusing on procreation is too reductive. Either way, the Raptors are soft. Men built the arena they call home, and women birthed every single person who attends their games. Soft as butter, Raptors apologized because one of their players said only women can procreate during Women's History Month. I'll say it for you. Only women can have babies. Wow. What an inflammatory statement, Jose. Media is not triggered or angry, laughing at how stupid this ideology is. It is an article of progressive faith that gender is no more the matter of self-perception, with which individuals are free to change at will, with no correlation to biological sex, which in reality is rooted in an individual's chromosomes and reflected by hundreds of genetic characteristics. Only females, you wouldn't think this has to be spelled out. Only females are physically capable of bearing children, though pro-LGBT activists who feel differently would like to reorient society's understanding of gender to refer exclusively to perception. To that end, the media frequently promotes stories about pregnant trans men, or actually women suffering from gender dysphoria, and research about transplanting wombs into men who identify as women. That's all we need, right?
Seriously?
Yeah. Absent such semantic maneuvers or artificial machinations, however, all birthing persons are in fact mothers. Yeah, so I got to keep coming back to the same old thing. All of this craziness, these are not independent, isolated events. They're all part of a grand scheme. And the name of the grand scheme is cultural Marxism or neo-Marxism. And it all goes back to the Frankfurt School of 1922, when a group of Marxists in Frankfurt, Germany, decided that although Karl Marx had gotten Marxism down pretty well, he made one mistake, and he thought that the communist revolution, the Marxist revolution, was inevitable. That the workers of the world would unite to throw off their chains, meaning the bourgeoisie, the upper classes, and start a dictatorship of the proletariat, which would lead to all power to the Soviets. That the people would take over and run society. This had to happen. It was a matter of when, not if. But a good communist could hasten its comings. by indulging in the Marxist doctrine, which was that the end is so desirable that any means to get there as soon as possible was justified. So if you wanted to be a member of the CPUSA, you had to be willing to lie, cheat, do all kinds of unethical things because the odds are so stacked against you by the powers that be that you could never succeed by playing by their rules.
Oh, I didn't know you were talking about the January 6th committee.
Well, there you go. Yeah. And if you like, I'll get to that in a minute. So, so the idea then was not to bet all your chips on the revolution, the proletarian revolution, because we found out in World War I that French and German workers could kill each other on the battlefield, and Russian workers could kill each other on the battlefield with carefree abandon. So that idea wasn't going to work. So they shifted their tactics and decided that they had to attack the system from the inside by infiltrating the institutions of the upper classes, the universities, the schools, the media, to start getting people used to the idea that they were living in a society of oppression, that unless you were a multi-billionaire, you were part of the oppressed classes, banking on the fact that people are not going to change the situation they're in if they think it's working for them. So the people had to be convinced that the system that you're in is not working for them. And the way to do that was destroy their faith in everything they thought they knew and everything they understood. Even hard and fast concrete benchmarks like only women can have children. That had to be debunked. And the miracle of America had to be debunked. That's why you see all the statues being torn down, that heroes like Washington and Jefferson, they were slaveholders. So they were absolute bad people. Anything they did couldn't possibly be good. It's all part of the same thing. And this thing, it just kind of inched its way forward in closed circles amongst communists until a guy named Antonio Gramsci came along in Italy. And Antonio Gramsci wrote the Prison Diaries. Well, he was in prison. One good thing Mussolini did. Mussolini started out as a socialist, wound up to be a strong anti-communist, giving the lie to the ideological misbranding that anyone who's against communism is obviously a fascist. Look at Mussolini, right? So Mussolini threw Gramsci in prison, and Gramsci had time to write the Prison Diaries, which is a how-to-do-it book that the communists in the USA embraced and carried it forward with the help of what Lenin is accredited with branding useful idiots. That is, people on the left who listen to the Marxist doctrine and say, yeah, I believe in some of that stuff. I think I'll side with these guys. So as we move forward, there were various apologists for communist Soviet Union and the United States, people who should have known better, including a lot of them in the Roosevelt administration, which could be the subject of a whole show. The communists lost a lot of credibility when they entered the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact with Germany in 1941, which allowed them to attack Poland at the same time the Germans attacked Poland and to cut Poland in half. Now, you heard everybody criticizing the Germans for attacking Poland. Soviet Union, not so much. So, for a while, maybe Soviet Union wasn't so cool. But then when Hitler attacked the Soviet Union in 1941, everything shifted. We did everything we could to help the Soviet Union because they were fighting a common enemy. And, you know, all kinds of pro-Russian propaganda came out in the United States, pro-Soviet Union came out, including by folks in Hollywood and in the government itself. I had the Hollywood 10. You had guys like Alger Hiss. If you look at the picture at the Casablanca conference, or maybe it's Yalta, standing right behind Roosevelt is Alger Hiss, who was ratted out by another communist in the United States, a guy named Whittaker Chambers, former member of the Communist Party who came in from the cold. And then we had Joseph McCarthy, who is universally maligned. If you mention Joseph McCarthy, even around Republicans who know better, they're going to turn up their noses. But McCarthy came out and outed several communists in the Roosevelt and Truman administrations. And a book was written about him called Blacklisted by History. And McCarthy was a demagogue, no getting around it. He made a lot of mistakes as far as how he handled the media. He was not a very admirable person. But when the Venona intercepts came out, what the Venona intercepts were, the United States cracked the code of the Soviet Union early on in World War II. And we were reading a lot of their coded stuff, including stuff about Julius and Ethel Rosenberg and their activities as spies at Los Alamos. But of course, the government couldn't come forward with any of the Venona intercepts material because if they had, they would have blown their cover and they would have lost it. So after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Venona intercepts, and the Russians opened up a lot of their documents. And we found out that poor old Joe McCarthy, was right a whole lot more times than he was wrong. But the cover-ups were immense. And the cultural Marxism gained strength until the 60s came along. The Vietnam War in the 60s were golden opportunities for the neo-Marxists because the United States was in the middle of a very unpopular war. If you give most college kids the option, you can go to this demonstration or you can go to class. They're not going to say, what's the demonstration about? They're going to say, where's the demonstration? What time does it start? Okay, I'm going to take a short break and wrap this up here and get back to the card.
For your safety and convenience, please listen to this message. Heavy haul transports for the new Ukadu power plant are occurring almost daily and will continue for the next few months. We encourage you to use alternate routes to avoid traffic delays. Alternate routes, project information, and live tracking are available at poweronthemove.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to receive Guam PDN text alerts. Doosan Ukadu Power and Doosan Enterability thank you for your patience and support.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so the members of the Frankfurt School, there were a half dozen of them, in 1933 left Germany. They were all Jewish, and they saw the literal handwriting on the wall, and they packed up and left Germany, and they were all hired at Columbia University to do social research. And they spread their poison all around the United States. One of them was a gentleman named Herbert Marcuse, sometimes pronounced Marcuse. And the rest of them, after the end of World War II, went back to Frankfurt. Marcuse stayed in the United States, and one of the rallying cries during the 1960s by the student radicals, the Students for Democrat Society, etc., the student radicals chanted Mao, Marx, and Marcuse. So this was a golden opportunity for the cultural Marxists to pick up a lot of new followers, including useful idiots. Useful idiots saw that people on the left embraced a lot of the stuff that the Marxists were. They figured this is a good place for me. Along they went. And they did all of the things that good cultural Marxists or neo-Marxists should do. They took over universities, put all kinds of left-wing policies in place, and now their children and grandchildren have grown up and taken over the show. And that's what you're seeing. Every time you see one of these crazy things like the Raptor article that I just read you, what you're looking at is cultural Marxism in action. Now, the folks who are doing it may not be dyed-in-the-wool cultural Marxists. They may be useful idiots. It's pretty hard to tell the difference, but it is a serious problem. And, you know, in my darker days, like yesterday, which is a really dark day, I sometimes ask, have we hit the tipping point? Have we gone so far over the edge that we can ever pull up and say, whoa, this is all craziness? And anybody who's got a brain, has got more than a room temperature IQ, understands that it's craziness, that it's brainless, and that anybody goes along with it because it's easier cannot be our friend. We've got to work as hard as we can to get people straightened out. And that, of course, is one of the thrusts here on Tall Tales. That we don't care how offended you are when we tell you that the rice is orange. It ain't red. It's orange. And we don't care how offended you are when we tell you only females, people that started out with 2 X chromosomes, can have babies. And only a man and a woman and on, and the whole thing across the board. And it's picked up so much speed. It's taken over the media cartel. It's obviously taken over the Democrat Party. And a lot of well-meaning but uninformed, useful idiots out there in the peanut gallery. So, so much for the Toronto Raptors and their apologizing for saying something that's 100% correct.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to the next item on the card, which is Frenchie versus the Neocats. And let me see what folks are saying here on Facebook. Yeah, okay, so Frenchie versus the Neocats. Now, the Neocats are a sect of Catholics who subscribe to the Neo-Catechumenal Way. The Neo-Catechumenal Way was founded in the 60s by a guy named Francisco.
I just remember his nickname.
Yeah, Kiko. Yeah, I just had it at the tip of my tongue here. Get it for me, will you, Jose? Yeah, Francisco and his friend, Gloria Hernandez, may she rest in peace. And they wanted to revolutionize the Catholic Church with evangelism. They wanted to be missionaries. And their idea was
Arguello.
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 Yeah. Arguello.
Yeah, when you see the two dots above the U.
Ah.
In Germany, that's an umlaut, and it means it conditions towards the verb ahead of it. I mean, the vowel ahead of it. In Spanish, it means this is not a diphthong. You have to pronounce this letter. So it's Kiko Arguello.
But the double L, does it become a J? Arguello.
It's probably Arguello.
Arguello. There you go.
In
Y.
In Espanol, yeah. Gefunden tomorrow, Arguwedzu.
Arguello.
Yeah. Anyhow, we'll refer to him as Kiko just to make it easier on our tongue. So Kiko and Gloria started it, and they said that the parish model of the Catholic Church is old-fashioned and out of date and needs to be replaced by what they call communities, which is a group of maybe 50 or fewer people, each one of which has a catechist and a what's the group leader called?
Responsible.
And a responsible, yeah. And these are not clergy. And a catechist and the responsible don't have a chain of command through a priest or through the ordinary for their diocese. Their chain of command goes straight back to a guy named Giuseppe Gennarini, who's located in New Jersey. And Giuseppe's chain of command goes to Kiko. So the Neo-Catechumenal Way were brought here by Father David Kitigwa. This would be Kitigwa, Father David Kitigwa the Younger.
The Lesser.
The Lesser, yeah. There was the real David Kitigwa the Greater. May he rest in peace. And then David Kitigwa the Lesser, who brought the Neo-Cats to Guam and sold it to our Archbishop at the time, former Archbishop Apperone. And he brought in a, I don't know what, I guess catechist at the diocesan level, Pat, I can't remember her last name.
Pat Tallwoman.
Pat, also known as the Tall Woman. Yeah. And it was her job to get the Neo-Cats started here in the island. And they started several communities. The second community, known as the Agana community at the time, had as one of its members Antonio Apperone, who for Neo-Cat purposes was just a member. He was
simply Brother Tony.
Brother Tony. And he was the responsibility of the catechist, who I think was Father Pius, and the responsible, a certain Jackie Terlahi. Yeah. So he was not the bishop. He was just another Tentago in the community. And it gives you kind of an insight as to some of the things that happened in the church. So he was 100% behind the Neo-Cats. And the Neo-Cats achieved all kinds of power within the diocese. And of course, when it comes to why did Bishop Apperone, who had all of the power, sign up with the Neo-Cats and surrender so much of his power? Allegations of blackmail, coercion, extortion, etc., floated. I'm not going to get into that.
But it has a lot to do with the structure and the schedule of being an NCW. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can find out an awful lot about the NCW by going to Jungle Watch, junglewatch.info, and it's an extremely interesting story, even if you're an atheist or you've been a Southern Baptist all your life. Because the church is so I'm going to use the word invasive in a good sense here. Even Michael Bavacqua said Catholicism on Guam is a religion, but it's also an integral part of the culture. So if you would understand the Chamorro culture, it's also necessary that you understand Catholicism. And it's not an easy subject to understand. There's a lot to it. To me, it's very attractive if you are one who understands American law, especially the British version of American law, the jury trial, the common law versus statutory law, etc. Because the hierarchy of the Catholic Church and its what's the word I'm looking for here? Magisterium, which is kind of the body of laws that governs the Catholic Church, is extremely understandable and extremely logical if you spend the time trying to figure out or trying to learn at least the introductory parts of it. But this is all turned inside out and upside down by the neocats, who don't even subscribe to the Catholic liturgy. Catholic liturgy meaning the way Catholics worship when they go to church, the Mass. Mass being the English translation of missa being the Latin word for message. You go to church, you go to Mass for the message. So if you hear a priest saying the Mass is ended, it can't be, because it's a message that's been going on for 2,000 years. Obey the message, like the message, understand it, debunk it, whatever. Fact is, it's been going on for 2,000 years. And because the Catholic Church cited itself in Rome, much of the magisterium, in fact, all of the magisterium was originally put down in Latin. And there are 3 Latin phrases that really tell you about the Mass and how important it is for Catholics, and that's lex orandi, lex, I always forget this. What's the second one, Jose? I know this by heart, and I always forget.
Credendi?
Lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi. As you worship, so shall you believe. As you believe, so shall you live. Now, we talk a lot of times about where we are with some of the maladies of our society. And, of course, the Democrats' approach to it is any problem we have in society, very easy. The government will fix it. We'll pass laws. We'll create an agency, and we'll fix it. When the real fact is that society has to have the ability to keep itself on track and to fix its own problems. And we hear about the raging crime rate here in an island, how methamphetamine has taken over our young people, etc. And the reason is because of failure of civil society. And every civil society is a little different. We talk about culture. That's what we're talking about. The civil society in Madison, Wisconsin, is night and day different from the civil society here on Guam. And one of the anchors in a civil society can be religion. And like it or not, religion is an extremely powerful force for social control. So when you debunk religion and you diminish it, you throw it out, you replace it with Marxism, then you are junking an important part of civil society and, of course, social control. Now, some people say, hey, that's great. I don't want any social control. I'm a hedonist. If it feels good, do it. That's my philosophy. Well, maybe so, but that's where we are. So the neocats, took over that seminary because Apparon gave it to them. That was the war of the seminary. And I was deeply involved in that, the certificate of titles fight, etc. Apparon secretly recorded something called a Declaration of Deed Restriction. I'm going to take a short break here and come back.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
After a week of showcasing the best soloists, choirs, small ensembles, bands, and orchestras from Guam, Saipan, Japan, and the U.S., the 2023 two-month-day music festival is coming to a close. Don't miss the grand finale event on Saturday, March 11th at the Micronesia Mall Center Court starting at 2 o'clock. See command performances from soloists and groups who wowed the judges, showcase performances, and the awards ceremony. TBMF is a production of the Guam Philharmonic Foundation. Visit tbmfguam.org for more information.
So, a hotel that was started by a Japanese corporation out in Manilo had hard times, and the hotel was sold. So I'm not going to mention the name of the group that ponied up the money. Well, the church borrowed money to buy that building, and then an eleemosynary group ponied up the money, gave it to the diocese to pay off the mortgage. So what did Apparon do with this building that was owned free and clear out in Manilo? He turned it into a seminary. And I'll have to admit that way back when they did a dinner honoring Ida Terlahi, I went to that dinner and I said, boy, this is pretty interesting. But I said to myself, wow, a seminary here on the island, is that what we really need? But I didn't think a whole lot of it. But of course, the purpose of the seminary was to train priests in the neo-catechumenal way, not diocesan priests. So the seminary was built, the loan was paid off thanks to the charity of that group, and then Apparon secretly recorded a conveyance called a Declaration of Deed Restriction. And the Declaration of Deed Restriction said that only the that the building could only be used by the neo-catechumenal way to train neo-catechumenal priests. And it recognized a corporation, the directors of which were appointed by the Archbishop. Now, the Archbishop had an eclectic group of no, they were all neo-cats. And the articles also said that the board could not make important decisions, or any important decision made by the board was subject to the board of control. 4 people on the board of control, 3 of them lived in New Jersey. That was Giuseppe Generini, Generini's wife, a priest, and Anthony Apparon. So total control of that valuable piece of property was given to the neo-cats to train neo-catechumenal way priests. The Committee for Concerned Catholics hired a very good real estate attorney to do research on the so-called Declaration of Deed Restriction. And he wrote up a paper saying, this is more than just an incident on the title. This transfers title in fee simple absolute from the church to this corporation that Apparon controls. So in other words, Apparon gave away church property to the neo-cats. Now I'm laying this all out because this is complicated and some of the details may be a little bit sketchy, but you need to understand this when I get to Frenchie's column. You need to have some background here. So finally, after 5 years, now ordinarily church rules require when you do something like this, you get the approval from the right dicastery in Rome, and these are supposed to be mentioned in avisos to the parishioners. Nobody knew about this. It was finally found, and Aperon and some really strange machinations occurred at the Department of Land Management, where a certificate of title issued showing that fee simple title was in the Archdiocese of Agana, but there was no memorial on that certificate of title showing the declaration of deed restriction. Now, explanation here, Law and Order notebooks, Jose. A certificate of title will show you where the fee simple title lies, and then there are blanks where all of the encumbrances and other items in the chain of title are entered. So if there's a mortgage, it goes in, it's a memorial on the certificate of title. If there's a lien, a tax lien, whatever. So there's no way that this declaration of deed restriction could not have been a memorial on that certificate of title. Well, you go to Jungle Watch and you can read up on the whole thing. It was a really interesting story. So when the Register of Titles, a certain Andrew Santos, was confronted, showing, hey, you kind of forgot something. Ironically, he'd done an abstracted title the day before he issued that faulty certificate. And, of course, his abstract showed that declaration of deed restriction. So when he was confronted, he said, yeah, I've already fixed it. And he showed us a new certificate of title with a handwritten memorial, right? A handwritten memorial that was even wronger than the first one. And this started me on the warpath. I did a Sunshine, which the Director of Land Management at the time, Juan Bora, wouldn't honor. I finally sued him, won, got my attorney's fees back. Bora was fined $1,000, on and on and on. So when Archbishop Burns came in, he got up to speed on this whole thing, fired the Aperon directors, and of course replaced Aperon with himself, and conveyed that property back to the Archdiocese where it has always belonged. Now, if you don't understand this, then this whole neo-catechumenal way might not be as important to you as it ought to be. But that's what happened. You know, this was a divestment of the church's property.
And this did not happen overnight. This
No.
was a very meticulous way that they got into us. They got into our families, and they got deep into the higher-ups of government and religion,
Exactly.
the church on Guam.
Exactly. Now, I had a little verbal shootout on another talk show with Giuseppe Generini, who came to the island, it must have been, 5 or 6 years ago. He got a real warm welcome at the airport. You right? Remember that?
I heard about that.
And the question was, well, why was this declaration of deed restriction necessary? And his answer was, well, in case there's litigation. Was this foreshadowing?
Absolutely.
Foreshadowing what ultimately happened?
Mm-hmm. And that's a part of how they had Aperon in their clutches.
Okay, let's break for the big halftime show, and I think I'll finally get to Frenchie versus the Neocats here.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Grilling the CEO. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Norfolk Southern's Chief Executive Alan Shaw faced tough questions on Capitol Hill.
Norfolk Southern CEO began his Senate testimony with an apology while recommitting his company to cleaning up the toxic mess left behind from last month's train derailment in Ohio.
Norfolk Southern will clean the site safely, thoroughly, and with urgency.
The accident sparked outrage from East Palestine residents who fear the release of vinyl chloride will create long-term health problems. Norfolk Southern is committing $20 million to help the community, but pressure is building on the company to ensure those impacted are cared for in the future. Congress is now considering new rail safety legislation, from requiring increased temperature monitoring to spending more on hazmat training.
Fox has Mark Meredith. Police in Hamburg, Germany say the threat is over, that they believe the gunman died after shooting and killing at least 6 people at a Jehovah's Witness meeting hall Thursday night. Police don't have a motive. The bodies of 2 Americans killed in Mexico last week will return to the U.S. Thursday. The cartel, blamed for the killings, apologized and turned 5 of its members over to Mexican police. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley blasting the cartel.
We need to use our special ops and our intelligence to go and deal with the cartels just like we dealt with ISIS, and go and crush them and make sure that they know this is not going to happen.
Haley on Fox News. President Biden unveiled his 2024 budget Thursday in Philadelphia, taking aim at large corporations.
My budget cuts wasteful spending by getting rid of special tax breaks for big oil companies who made $200 billion in profit last year in the midst of a worldwide recession.
The plan also calls for raising taxes on people making more than $400,000 a year. America's listening to Fox News.
After a week of showcasing the best soloists, choirs, small ensembles, bands, and orchestras from Guam, Saipan, Japan, and the U.S., the 2023 Two-Monday Music Festival is coming to a close. Don't miss the grand finale event on Saturday, March 11th at the Micronesia Mall Center Court starting at 2 o'clock. See command performances from soloists and groups who wowed the judges, showcase performances, and the awards ceremony. TBMF is a production of the Guam Philharmonic Foundation. Visit tbmfguam.org for more information.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. More services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
General Motors tries to cut costs with an expensive buyout plan.
General Motors is offering a voluntary separation package to most of its salaried employees. GM confirmed the plans to the Detroit News and says it needs to achieve $2 billion in cost savings. Eligible employees need to sign up by March 24th. GM employs about 58,000 staff. Workers with at least 5 years of service and all global executives with at least 2 years of service are eligible. GM says the cuts will help it to bring down the cost of its vehicles and boost profits. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
Saturday Night Live bracing for a possible strike by its post-production editors.
The show has a deadline set of April 1st, barring an agreement with producer NBC Universal. The 12 to 20 editing crew members have announced that they intend to stop work and walk off the show. The group's negotiations center on what they deem as pay inequality and health benefits. Members of the editing team for the late-night sketch show say they are paid rates far below industry standards, while colleagues working other jobs on the show receive pay appropriate to their crafts. NBC Universal has offered annual increases that fall short of annual raises, despite increases to cost of living. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
The cooler maker Yeti is recalling nearly 2 million products.
The Consumer Product Safety Commission says the magnets on the Sidekick dry gear case, M20 soft backpack cooler, and M30 soft cooler can come detached, posing a risk of serious injury or death. It says consumers should immediately stop using them. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
And the United Airlines passenger accused of trying to open a plane door mid-flight makes some bizarre statements during his bail hearing. The judge ordering Francisco Torres to undergo a mental health evaluation and postponed that hearing. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
For your safety and convenience, please listen to this message. Heavy haul transports for the new Ukadu power plant are occurring almost daily and will continue for the next few months. We encourage you to use alternate routes to avoid traffic delays. Alternate routes, project information, and live tracking are available at poweronthemove.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to receive Guam PDN text alerts. Doosan Ukadu Power and Doosan Enerbility thank you for your patience and support.
Well, hello. Ray Gibson here to tell you it's officially Frontier season at Nissan Guam. Go test drive a new Frontier and own one with no money down. Plus, Nissan will make the first 3 payments for you. You'll love your new Frontier as much as I do mine. Plus, they're giving away cash, all sorts of prizes. Way too much to share in a 30-second commercial, so visit the showroom or visit the website, nissanguam.com today.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
So here we are, and you know what's going to come next, Jose, so go ahead.
I pressed the wrong button. All right. You too can be a part of the Tall Tales Rogue Gallery by pointing your browser, that's where you get onto the internet, and type in thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. There is a picture of a t-shirt and a beard. If you click on that picture, it'll take you to the website. You can order the shirt. When it arrives, put it on, take a selfie, and send that selfie to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255.
Yeah, very good, Jose. So you too could have your picture broadcast to our international radio listening audience. All you got to do is follow those easy instructions. It's a lot of fun. You'll get a lot of bragging rights out of it. So I was bringing up debate and some background here on Frenchie's column about the neocats. So I did peek at Facebook during the halftime, and I got to make a comment on something that Rico posted, Jose. Imodium is right up there with penicillin when it comes to wonder drugs. That's all I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so So the Neocats really infiltrated the church under Archbishop Apparon, who was not an archbishop for their purposes, who was just Brother Tony, and caused tremendous damage to the church. And I noticed that you got, you and one of the posters had an exchange about hate. You want to explain that to our international radio listening audience, Jose?
Yeah, I'm not going to say the person's name, but he
beep beep
beep was a little critical of your criticism and called it hate, hating of Apparon. And I just reminded him that we don't hate the person, but we absolutely hate that horrendous sin that he levied on this island and created on this island.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. And it's a very integral part of how the NCW was able to do what they were able to do.
By
knowing his sin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing, you explain the scrutiny while you're at it, Jose.
Yeah, and you know, I want to be very clear, and I put these in the comments too. Many, many good people and family members that are part of it. People know people who are part of the NCW, and by no means is this a judgment on them, but the higher leadership, even especially off island, were able to come to this island. They did it very slowly. They did it methodically and very. The first group that they wooed were the influential and the wealthy on the island, and it's very clear if you go to any of the communities that it created. And see who's a part of it. It's very well connected here on Guam, and I even risk saying anything right now because everybody is well connected to the NCW, whether you know it or not. That's how they got into here, and there is a part of a journey through the the catechism where you go through something called scrutiny, and it's somewhat, if everybody knows what confession is, for a Catholic, it's a very private moment. You talk to your clergy. Priest who anonymously doesn't even know you. They can be hidden behind a screen or in a different room, and you confess your sins, and they're absolved, and you go out, and nobody else knows what's going on. But in a scrutiny, it's almost akin to a group confession, and it's supposed to be non-recorded. It's supposed to be, you're not supposed to say anything outside of this group, but priests have a different oath. If they reveal anything that happens inside of a confessional booth, they run the risk of their salvation. With a scrutiny, there is no boundaries and there is no restrictions other than the ones where you promise not to say. So what happens if somebody leaves the group or if somebody, talks about something that's really deep and they really poke you for the worst thing that you've ever done, even if you've already confessed it, you've been absolved of it. That sin doesn't exist anymore according to the Catholic Church. But in the scrutiny, it still exists. So it came out through different methods or different ways from different sources that some sins were revealed to other people that kind of held over the heads of some other people who were in charge of stuff here on Guam. And that's how they were able to get into everything here on Guam. Now, whether you agree with me or not, the fact is there is a scrutiny. It is a group confession. And whether you want to follow that or not is up to you. But that is how they got their way here on Guam.
Yeah. So there's so much to it. And there's an awful lot online if you were to study it up. So that's where we are with the Neo-Catechumenal Way. Now, after Apparon literally fell from grace and took off for Rome, and we don't know where he is now. Suspicion, I saw something somewhere that he registered to vote in New Jersey, which would make a certain amount of sense, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when the Neocats lost their bishop, that set them back pretty hard. But they've got their own building, and they are still in operation. And when Generini came out here and talked in terms of evangelizing this part of the world, it was not a good sign, because evangelizing means proselytizing. In other words, if you believe that the Catholic religion is a religion handed down from Christ to Peter and et cetera, and so on down through the presbytery, and that Catholicism is the one true religion, it's almost like you have a responsibility then to tell other people, hey, folks, here's something you really need to know. So there's nothing wrong with evangelizing, provided, well, not even provided, but we usually think in terms of evangelizing as directing it towards people that are not Catholics, right? People that have no religion.
That was the irony.
Yeah. But evangelization to the Neocats means penetrating Catholic parishes and converting the parishes to the Neo-Catechumel way. It's a whole lot easier than building your own church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, we're all familiar with the Capuchins here on Guam. It's an order of priests, and we're all familiar with Jesuits because there's a few of them that were here on the island during the Spanish time also, and a few still left here. That's an order here. But what makes the Neo-Catechumel priests interesting is that it's not an order. It's just a charism that they follow, and I think that's very unique to the Catholic Church, which makes it very divergent from the way priestly orders happen.
Yeah, so they're not subject to the same disciplinary restrictions.
Or the Holy See.
Or the Holy See. They purport to not be a legal person, so they're not incorporated, et cetera, so they don't file all the papers, et cetera, that others file, sort of out of reach of civil government as far as we know.
And we do know that priests, when they are incarnated here on Guam, they take somewhat of an oath of obedience to the Archbishop, but there's a secondary oath that's taken when you're an NCW priest, in the sense that that's who you serve.
Yeah. So they were kind of out of sight for quite some time after Aparon, after the demise of Aparon, Archbishop Burns taking over, all of the civil liability that resulted from Archbishop Aparon's reign. But now they're back, and that's where Frenchie's column comes in. And this is what it says. As it is often pointed out, humans have the inherent bad habit of not learning from their own mistake. Both Tim Rohrer and myself have warned our readers for the past several years of the dangers are in underestimating the neo-catechumenal way. After a wait of several years, the Neos came back with a bang last night with their biggest chinging since they were slapped down by Archbishop Hahn and limited in theory by Archbishop Burns. The nefarious and dangerous Signore Giannarini, accompanied by the ever-sickly Monsignor David Kitigua, Preston Paris, Jason, and Father Areola, all gathered at the Barragata Church, the longtime hideaway of the defrocked Father Cristobal, and met with their adoring fans as if this was the second coming of Christ himself. The crowd was large. Deacon Martinez, who was officially the vicar for the Neos, had not been warned and learned about it through other parishioners displeased by the event. If Deacon Martinez was not aware, chances are that the chancery was left in the dark as well. Is the Vicar General going to do? He is now faced with an open coup in his own courtyard, while the Archbishop is off island on medical leave. Leave it to the crooked Gennarini to recognize a great opportunity to land back on Guam with absolutely no opposition and demonstrating that the Emperor has no clothes. By trying to be inclusive with the Neos and being a good sport, Archbishop Burns gave an impression of weakness. Father Convocar might be a nice priest, but in this case, he is way out of his depth. You better pray for Guam. The great deceiver is back. Yeah, I wish I could offer words of encouragement, and that's all I can offer.
We have to watch this, and again, not because these are evil people involved in the sense that it's rampant crime and stuff, but everything is done with a very thick layer of opacity.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what happens underneath. And even the archdiocese doesn't know what happens underneath, behind the scrutinies and all the other things, because there's a somewhat of a secrecy to it. But it was that secrecy that led to everything going on, up to even these lawsuits that are happening here because of sexual abuse that happened on the island. Things were hidden and things were known.
Yeah.
And to me, and maybe not even this, but we haven't even heard a mea culpa from anybody from these communities, not just apologizing for Apparon, but talking or not supporting him anymore. Support him as a person, but don't support him as if he's an innocent person in this matter. And we have yet to hear any of that from any of the leadership of the NCW.
Yeah, well, the local Neocats have what is ordinarily recognized as their own blog, and I check on that just like I read some of the liberal stuff that's out there online just to keep myself informed. And the only thing they've said at all about the whole mess is that Apparon got a bum rap.
Exactly.
That's the quote gospel for them. Apparon got a bum rap.
There's another person, another former priest now, because he was in, what's the word? Everyone says defrocked, but laicized, and that would be Cristobal.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a lot of people know who he is, but he fled the island as well. He has things to answer for here on Guam, but he also is a part of that network and how they were able to gain power here on Guam.
Yeah. So the reason that I spend so much time on this is certainly important for Catholics. And it's certainly important for people that live on this island that aren't Catholics, for the reasons that I mentioned, because the Catholic Church is so important culturally, socially, politically, etc. And given the battle that we have here with the neo-Marxists, the church should be our strongest ally. But unfortunately, the neo-Marxists have apparently gotten to the Pope too, and what ought to be our ally is just another stumbling block. So we got to be strong here amongst ourselves, and we can't go through this, well, yeah, I didn't think it was right, but I didn't want to say anything because of, which has kind of got us where we are right now with all the civil liability. Okay, a long time spent on that one item on the card. Let me go to the next item on the card, which is the GV board versus the open government law. And I noticed somebody's jumped into the green room here. Maybe it's it's Frenchie. What a tremendous sense of timing, huh?
I don't think he wants to talk about his vacation.
Probably not. Yeah, I ran into some people over the weekend that tell me they really like the show. And I was kind of puffing out my chest there, patting myself on the back and telling them how proud I was of my humility. And then they used the word especially. Yeah. And you can imagine what came after that, especially when Frenchie calls in. Man, that guy is so knowledgeable and so interesting. Now, there's another side of this, but I'm going to save that until I hear Frenchie out today, okay? Tell us a little bit more, Frenchie.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Bob. There is a lot of things related to the neos. I wrote another article after the one you read on the air, but the scrutiny is a huge issue. Among other things, there are many issues tied to the neos. But the scrutiny allows the people in charge in those communities to know all the dirty little secrets of their potential cohorts. And it is especially a big problem with underage children and teenagers. And it is multiplied even more when you realize that the NEOs, as a tactic of recruitment for priests, have a tendency to use priests that have sexual problems. May they be with women or with men, and we've seen it with Cristobal, with Apuran, and many others, some of them that were not always here on island, but that were attached to the archdiocese. And it's very interesting to see that this is how they get to people, and they know their dark secrets. And once they know their dark secrets, they are very malleable to whatever the NEOs want to do. And when you have that type of priest around young children and teenagers, you're asking for trouble. And there are many, many cases in Europe and in the mainland, in the United States, in South America, where children of members of those communities have been abused by priests that are running free in those areas. And one of the main issues that many Catholics have on the island is that not only did they protect Apuran from all the misdeeds that he did in a previous life, they also abated him in continuing to do so. Don't forget that his nephew accused him of abusing him way after the NEOs were here and doing all that. And one of the main actors in using that kind of blackmail was Father Pius, rest his soul. He's probably in Hades now. And this is a very unhealthy approach. I believe Tim also posted something from Archbishop Vigano, who is doing a whole expose on how the NEOs have gone after traditional nuns in Italy, and there are issues of. I was reading the Italian commentary on Chuck White's website, and basically the main thing that people have is a little bit what's happening right now in our schools in the United States with all that shaping, that sexualization of children. And that has been going on in the communities of the Neocats for many years, and without any sense of urgency at the Vatican, because they were protected. Now they are in a strange position with Francis, because Francis believes they are conservative and therefore is against them, even though they are not conservative at all. They are kind of moles within the church trying to justify a personal adoration of one person. So it's very strange. And now they are even going further. They are claiming that Carmen, which was the second founder of the neo-catechumenal way, Carmen has apparently, since she passed away, realized some miracles, and some of their bishops and cardinals are validating that in order to get her to be recognized at least as blessed. And if that happened, this would be a disaster for the church overall. But yeah, and on Guam, while they were very silent and discreet over the last 6 years, they still remain in the corridors of powers at Adelup, because many of the NEOs are very close ties with the Bank of Guam and with our current governor. And they, so like Jose was saying, you never know who you're talking to. They are very, very secretive. They are very opaque. And, this is how they were able to bypass the limitations that Archbishop Burns had put on them, and they have basically laughed at it, and they have not been called to any kind of disciplines for it. Archbishop Burns had the opportunity to make their presence illegal on Guam as far as the Catholic religion was. He chose not to do so by keeping the bridges open, but they saw that as a form of weakness. And since he is now almost on permanent medical leave, they take advantage. And in a way, I don't blame them. They see an opportunity, and that they have always been very good at capitalizing on good opportunities, and this is one. And some of the comments on the website were, well, we threw them out once, and we're going to throw them out again. We never threw them out. They've always been there. They've been discreet. They've been in the shadows, but they were never thrown out. And what we need is a good exorcism for the whole island, because there is a lot of evil going on right now between Adelup and the Neos. There are a lot of issues that are coming out, and this is very interesting. I'm writing right now on my other website about the Straussians, who are the ancestors of the neocons on the political arena. Actually, they have a lot of similar methods than the neocats have. So I was thinking about that when I was writing the other day. I said, this is very strange, especially when you know that Giuseppe Gennarini was an active member of the Red Brigades in Italy, who during the years of lead or gold, when they were trying to disrupt the whole Italian government and actually assassinated the prime minister. And this is where Gennarini is coming from. He's a typical Marxist that converted back to normal life, in between quotes. And we've seen them all over Europe, and actually the neocons in D.C. are former Marxists that infiltrated both the Democratic and the Republican Party. So it's the same techniques of infiltration, of learning secrets, using them, blackmailing people, and having the larger body that they are infiltrating acting on their behalf against their own good. So it's fascinating to observe, but yet at the same time, we have a duty not to let them do that.
True enough, Frenchie. I didn't mention that Tim has posted a couple of other items on Jungle Watch after yours concerning the Neo-Catechismal Way. And once again, it's junglewatch.info, an extremely interesting place to look for the issues of the day, and this is the issue of the day as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure you agree. Yeah, I agree. It's a earth-shattering event that happened on Tuesday, and at least on the religious side, but it also has unseen consequence on the civilian side of life, on the that most people do not comprehend. But those people are after one thing and one thing only: it's power. May it be secular or religious. And you have to keep your eyes and ears open, because they are serious. They are very serious people, and among them are very powerful people. Well, keep up the good work, Frenchie. We'll be looking at Jungle Watch and listening for you on the show. Thanks again. All right, let's head for Wrigley Field, Jose.
half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
For your safety and convenience, please listen to this message. Heavy haul transports for the new Ukadu power plant are occurring almost daily and will continue for the next few months. We encourage you to use alternate routes to avoid traffic delays. Alternate routes, project information, and live tracking are available at poweronthemove.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to receive Guam PDN text alerts. Doosan Ukadu Power and Doosan Enerability thank you for your patience and support.
Here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago. 2 more innings, and Tall Tales will be over for another whole week, Jose. Wow. Yeah, Jose and I will go into hibernation for 70. That's 70 hours. We'll be back 1600 on Monday, regretting every hour that we were away from our tailgater audience, but that's the way it is. So we'll soldier on, right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Next item on the card is the Guam Visitors Bureau versus the Open Government Law. And here's another example, I think, of something that went on for a long time that just wasn't right. And no one wanted to jump in and blow the whistle until Carl Gutierrez came along. And he said, hey, hold on, you guys. You're violating the open government law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And an awful lot of confusion came out of it. You know that the board of directors said, okay, if that's what you think, we're not going to have any board meetings then. And Carl Gutierrez referenced, we have a lawyer here that can deal with what I see as discrepancies between the law and our bylaws. And then the board said, well, then we ought to have our own lawyer. Kind of not understanding that the lawyer is the lawyer for the corporation, not for the director, for the manager, not for the board, et cetera. So they didn't meet for a long time. And then the next thing that happened, we got into a game called I Can Cancel Mine Before You Cancel Yours. So board meetings were canceled, general membership meetings were canceled, oversight hearings were canceled. Finally, the members met last Friday, yeah. I went. It was very orderly, and they decided that they really didn't decide much of anything, except that they couldn't decide. And they elected directors, and that was basically all they did. And I was impressed with the professionalism of the election. It was as professional as anything our election commission puts on. There was supposed to have been a directors meeting that afternoon, but guess what? It was canceled. So now they've had their first meeting, and that was reported in the Post. And here's how it goes. The Visitors Bureau Board of Directors met officially for the first time since all meetings were suspended in May. On Wednesday, GVB boards gathered and had a quorum to have their first meeting in 10 months since the meetings were suspended following violations of the open government law and concerns with the Bureau's bylaws. However, the meeting, which was classified as a special meeting rather than a regular meeting, would not exactly go according to the plan laid out by the agenda, due to it being changed by management after being published. Milton Morinaga, VB board member chairman, said Morinaga intended to elect the 12th director and elect corporate officers, but explained it was changed after a legal opinion by counsel Joseph McDonald that they would have to have discussions before the election. Although the board of directors eventually decided to have the election of the 12th director and select corporate officers in their next regular meeting, a large portion of the meeting involved board members confirming with McDonald how they can conduct meetings in a legal fashion. So that's what it took. After all this time, the board members are finally saying, oh, you mean we can't just do what we want to do? There's law on this point? Yeah, so something good will come of this. Some of the questions raised included whether the board needed to make motions to approve the agenda before every meeting. Whoa, blasphemy. How do we know what we're going to meet about until we meet and start talking? That's how we figure it out. How board members can get items on the agenda and how board members should be communicating with each other, to name a few. Quote, just because we're getting so tight about everything, do we need to approve the agenda, Joe? Board member Sonny Atta asked. Atta wasn't the only member who sought legal advice on proper lawful conduct. What's that got to do with anything? Per your interpretation, is this a violation of the open government law? How can two directors call a meeting? They maybe had to get together and say, we want to call a meeting, but that's discussing board meetings. So how do two directors call a meeting? George Chu asked, do you want us to read each other's minds? After having read this article, I would use that old lawyer's objection. George Chu is assuming a fact, not an evidence, Jose. Do you want to read? Do you want us to read each other's minds? Minds? In response, McDonald cited sections of the law and gave his legal opinions as answers, often saying, I'm telling you what the law says. Listen, all I'm doing is just trying to suggest a way to do this so that there's order and logic to it. Oh boy, he's going to get in trouble for that. Order and logic? McDonald said in response to an inquiry whether resolutions should be written down after board members wished only to discuss them orally. However, McDonald said as board members, it ultimately ends up being their decision to make and confirm. They don't necessarily have to follow his interpretations or opinions. Yeah, only a fool would listen to advice of counsel and then say, well, I know what his advice is, but I don't like it, so let's do it this way. Let's go back to the way we've been doing it that caused this conflagration in the first place. Now, I got to point something out here, and that is this, that counsel who deals with a board probably ought to demand $25,000 more than he would if you were just dealing with an agency. Because I can't think of anything harder to give legal advice to than a multi-member board.
Or at least hire a counsel that has no hair.
Exactly.
Because there wouldn't be need to pull any more out.
Exactly. So, you know, board members, and of course board members, we choose board members to run agencies instead of letting a single person do it, is because we think we're going to get better quality decisions. We're going to get varying viewpoints. We're going to get discussions. We're going to get arguments. We're going to get a thought process that over time has proven more reliable than relying on a single decision maker in most contexts. But that same process also makes it more difficult for counsel to give board members advice they don't like the sound of. And that's just inherent to all boards. Now, this board, I suspect, is especially different to counsel, especially the elected board members, because the elected board members all run corporations, and they have a particular relationship with their own board. And when they come to a board meeting, they say, this is what I want to do. And most of the time, that's the way things go. They're not used to having somebody, just because he has a law degree, saying, sorry, folks, you can't do that. So my heart goes out to Joe McDonnell. I read his analysis that was posted on the website of the Visitors Bureau. And it was a very workmanlike job, something that should have been done a long time ago. And I got to wonder where people that were counsel for that commission, for that board, were all this time. Were they just turning a blind eye to this? Just not interested? Just let it go? So, I wonder. Okay, so going back to the article. As a result, board members were at times flustered with the ways they needed to go about their business and questioned the practicality of not violating the various laws imposed on them. Well, if any of you guys are listening, I got to remind you of something. You ain't spending your own money. You're spending public money. In a sense, you're spending my money. And if you can't spend it in accordance with the law, don't spend it at all. Just because you think it's better, that it would be less, it would be easier to ignore the law, doesn't make it acceptable to me or anybody else. Quote, tourism is moving like this and we're being held here because of a technicality and notification. Now, the technicality that you're being held to is you didn't notice this in your meeting. And if you don't put it in the notice of the meeting, you can't do it. To me, that is more than a technicality.
That's pretty, that's revealing.
It is.
Because it's like saying, I wanted to have a drink, so I walked in the store and walked out with a soda, but they made me pay for it or else I get arrested. What a technicality.
Yeah. Yeah, so when we have meetings, we should be able to do whatever we want to do. And the hell with the public. Who cares about them?
Minor technicality.
Minor technicality. We're competing with the world for tourists. We're dragging. We're getting caught, said Ada, using hand gestures to show how far behind GVB is. Yeah, you're getting caught. Nobody likes to get caught. After about an hour and a half of going back and forth with not only McDonnell, but also of GVB President Carl Gutierrez, the board managed to determine agenda for the next meeting, another technicality, which includes the election of the 12th board member and selection of corporate officers, an executive session, plans for the next fiscal year, and discussion on an annual performance review of management. Put it in your agenda and do it. Wow. So, you know, I'm repeating again for emphasis, there was a lot of turmoil leading to this point, but a lot of good is going to come out of it, for sure. And, you know, once again, I got a rule. Carl Gutierrez is right. These board members who get hung up on technicalities were wrong. All right, next item on the card. Taibbi versus the media cartel and big tech.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal Opportunity Lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
After a week of showcasing the best soloists, choirs, small ensembles, bands, and orchestras from Guam, Saipan, Japan, and the U.S., the 2023 Two-Monday Music Festival is coming to a close. Don't miss the grand finale event on Saturday, March 11 at the Micronesia Mall Center Court starting at 2 o'clock. See command performances from soloists and groups who wowed the judges, showcase performances, and the awards ceremony. TBMF is a production of the Guam Philharmonic Foundation. Visit tbmfguam.org for more information.
Okay, I'm going to change the order here. I'm going to deviate from the agenda. Even though I gave you notice at the beginning of the show what was the agenda. It's just a technicality, Jose. So I'm going to go to McNinch versus the Separati. I don't know if McNinch knows this, but he waded into a fight with the Separati. And this is the title of his column. There is another decolonization option. Now, the Separati will tell you independence, statehood, free association, which is, of course, BS. We know that statehood is a practical impossibility. Free association is a legal impossibility, leaving only independence standing. And that, of course, is what this whole decolonization thing is about. It's about an independent Guam, free of the United States. So here's what McNinch says. In 1970, the United Nations adopted Resolution 2625. And he says anyone can search for this resolution online and check page 124 at lines 19-23. And this is how the section reads. The establishment of a sovereign and independent state, the free association or integration with the independent state, or the emergence into any other political status freely determined by a people constitutes modes of implementing the right of self-determination by that people. Now, the Separati never mentioned that fourth one. They don't like it. They want to funnel you into the independence track. McNinch, and that's where McNinch picks a fight with the Separati. To make it even more simple and clear, the United Nations produced a cartoon on this point and put it on the decolonization website. It's also available on YouTube and in other places on the internet. Just search the term United Nations Decolonization Cartoon. The title of this animated video is United Nations and Decolonization Past to Present. Around minute 3 of this cartoon, the point that there are 4 political status options is made very clear. The fourth option essentially offers the opportunity to make the best political deal possible. Have you ever heard that before, Jose?
Skin of my.
Yeah. How about from me?
Oh, yes.
Over and over again,
Yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last 27 years, I've done a lot of polling on political status and federal relations. I've also conducted numerous focus groups and community discussions on the subject. In every event that allowed an open and free exchange of ideas, the consensus was that Guam should pursue status quo plus as a political option. This would mean that our leaders would seek to negotiate a better relationship with the federal government. Next week, I will discuss other other aspects of status quo plus, but the bottom line is that this concept is fully recognized by the United Nations. Now, the Separati will say we can't maintain the status quo no matter how much we gold-plated because we're still a colony, and that's not decolonization. So they get hung up on the language here, right? None of the approaches currently being looked at reflect this point because it's not about self-determination, it's about independence. What would Guam want to negotiate? There's a long list of things our leaders could ask for, and we should be able to get them. For instance, the Jones Act could be repealed. We could ask for a federal judge with life tenure on Guam. Ron is a pretty loyal tailgater, right? And that would seem to be like a no-brainer. It costs the national government nothing. There's a lot of good to be said for it, etc. You don't have to repeal the whole Jones Act. Just give us a waiver. We could ask for a voice in the U.S. Senate. We could ask for a commission to review and adjust any federal law that applies to Guam. NMI has I think they call it the 903 commission that reviews acts of Congress, determines their suitability for the Commonwealth, makes recognitions to the House and the Senate. Our leaders historically have not approached federal relations using negotiation. Well, we have, and we were just not very good at it. We took a no prisoners approach. We drafted up this Commonwealth Act, which is an unincorporated territory, but with some nice details added to it. And when we had our day in the U.S. Congress, Underwood introduced it. We went to a public hearing, and we took a no prisoners attitude. This is it. Take it or leave it. It's probably not a very good way to negotiate even with a used car salesman, not to mention the United States Congress. So they took option number 2, and here we are. And then there's some question as to how the negotiation would proceed. Now, this guy, Gary Cooper, thinks that it's going to be kind of like the Treaty of Paris or something like that, where we'll have this well-appointed room and the president's personal representative will sit down with Gary Cooper and Michael Bavacqua and Hope Cristobal, and it's not going to work that way. You're going to have to use powers of persuasion in an ad hoc basis, either with the executive branch or with the legislative branch. Now, we've tried it both ways. We did it with the legislative branch with a member of the House of Representatives, or maybe a senator named Manuel Lujan, who had a great affinity for us and sat down and worked on a lot of things with us. It was called the Spirit of Albuquerque. And then we've tried to do it with the executive branch. And you could read about that. You could read about the secret Guam study and other things like that. But we haven't really been very effective. Part of the problem, I think, is because I think there's a group consciousness here of people that are interested in this stuff, except the cognoscenti, like tailgaters, that all you have to do is get a hold of some congressman or some official from Washington and do your serial bitching. And you say, oh, yeah, okay, guys, what do you want? It's not going to work that way. And it has to be done in such a way that the national government officials, congresspeople, or whatever, see a benefit for them as well as a benefit for us. And I've talked about that before. It can't be, well, you have to do this because what you did in 1948. It's just not going to work. So the benefit for the United States is that if they were to and then of course, question is, who do we negotiate with? If you send the so-called Political Status Commission, you're not going to get anything out of it except Hope Cristobal. The governor is the logical choice. But I don't know if that is it's logical, but I don't know if it makes sense. And there's a difference between being logical and making sense. So we'd have to have the right person. Now, people ought to be running for governor on this platform. If you vote for me for governor, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come back to this on Monday because it's such an important subject. In the meantime, I'm only going to have time to say goodbye to our president. Let's go, Brandon!
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.
More storms hitting California. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. After weeks of being buried under feet of snow, the California mountains are bracing for an atmospheric river.
But this time it is expected to be rain, and that brings a new threat of its own. Rain that could turn all this snow into a thick, heavy slush, and the growing threat of more roofs collapsing. That is first responders from several different counties, all part of a mountain incident unified command, as they're calling it, all work against the clock, digging out as many homes as they can.
We're doing our best to just go door to door, assess needs, make sure that the structures are sound.
Here it's still an all-out battle against the near-emergency conditions that exist right through the mountains. They're still very deep in snow.
Ed Lasco with Fox 11 Los Angeles. The storm's expected to dump several inches of rain on central and southern California. Emergency officials warning of possible floods and mudslides. Days after 2 Americans were shot and killed by drug cartel members in Mexico, their bodies have been returned to the U.S.
Funeral home vehicles took those 2 bodies, those belonging to Shaid Woodard and Zindell Brown. They are finally back on U.S. soil now, nearly 1 week after they were both killed in that deadly attack.
Fox's Bill Malhusian in Brownsville, Texas. Meantime, the drug cartel turned over members it says were responsible for the killings. The Association of American Railroads urges rail companies to check their equipment.
Reps for the National Transportation Safety Board adding this is a safety win where the industry is taking action without regulation.
Fox's Kristen Goodwin. In Hamburg, Germany, a gunman opened fire last night inside a building used by Jehovah's Witnesses, killing at least 7 people. Police say the suspected gunman was found dead inside. No word what sparked the shootings. And stocks fell after a jobless claim showed the labor market is still strong. The Dow dived 544 points. America's listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
5 inches of rain by tomorrow.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com. Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now.
West Virginia takes its effort to ban transgender athletes in female sports to the nation's highest court.
West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to allow enforcement of a state law that bans biological males from participating in female sports.
Our goal is to protect the safety of women and to make sure that women are going to be able to compete under fair circumstances.
A federal appeals court issued an injunction after a district judge ruled the law was constitutional, rejecting the ACLU's claim that the law was in violation of Title IX. West Virginia is one of 18 states that have passed a Save Women's Sports Act. Jeff Manasso Fox News.
Texas executed inmate Arthur Brown Jr. yesterday for the 1992 murder of 4 people during a drug robbery. Brown insisted again he was innocent before receiving a lethal injection. As we prepare for daylight saving time this weekend, the debate rages on over whether most U.S. states should keep changing their clocks.
On Saturday night, we spring forward again, losing an hour of sleep but gaining that extra evening sunshine. However, some lawmakers have had enough of this back and forth, and it's one thing red and blue agree on. Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida are back with their Sunshine Protection Act. It would make daylight saving time permanent. Not everyone loves that idea, though. It would mean dark winter mornings. The Senate passed the Sunshine Protection Act last year. It died in the House, though, after representatives heard from organizations like the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, which argued too much light later in the day can mess with the circadian rhythm and our sleep cycles. They argued for permanent standard time. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
And Emmy Award-winning actor Robert Blake dies at 89. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Saving you money, I'm Hillary Barsky. Need to pay off student loan debt, start saving for a big-ticket item, or build funds for the future? Well, getting a side hustle is one of the best ways to reach your goal. Some jobs that can create some good extra dough include lawn care professional. You could possibly sign up as a vendor with GreenPal, a lawn care service and app which is sort of like Uber for mowing lawns. Or become a task rabbit and earn extra money by completing everyday errands and tasks for people in your area. Or how about trying your hand as a bookkeeper? This side gig typically pays about $30 an hour according to Flex Jobs. Or you could become an online instructor and share your knowledge with the world remotely and on your own schedule. And attention fashionistas, if you have an eye for current trends, you might be able to find a side gig as a fashion consultant for high-end shoppers. These are just a handful of side jobs, and there are many more where you can create your own schedule and snap up some additional cash. Saving you money, Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
Annoyed, frustrated with Marianne Williamson for jumping in the race?
Just not tracking that. Imagine 8-ball, whatever, if I could feel her aura.
And I had these terrible headaches, was diagnosed with having they had to take the top of my head off a couple times, see if I had a brain.
Water policy can go in all these different, it flows in different directions. Oh, I have puns on water.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome